Mets President of Baseball Operations David Stearns. David, here we are 4 days from opening day. How are you feeling about things?
I think we're all ready to get going. I think that's how we feel about things. And anyone who's been down here for the 7 weeks, I think, is ready to get on the plane and get competition started. But we're happy where the team is. I think our guys are ready to go, and we're looking forward to playing games that matter.
Cunha throws out DeLeo for the first out. So only because it's recency bias, I have to ask you about Alexander Canario. First of all, how do you get a guy like that? And second of all, what do you do with him now that we get to the end of spring training?
He's a really interesting guy. This is someone who was one of the better prospects in baseball. He's still really young. He's 24 years old. And he was one of the better prospects in baseball. Was part of a really big trade earlier in his career for Chris Bryant, a noteworthy deadline trade. And he just hasn't gotten the opportunity to really establish himself in the big leagues. When he's had some opportunities in the big leagues, he's hit for power. He has some swing and miss, which we've seen a little bit today in the first plate appearance, and that's going to be part of his game. But it's big-time power. He's a good athlete, plays good defense in the corners.
Speaking of good defense, Acuna with another fine play for the second out.
So I think the Cubs just sort of ran out of opportunity for him, and they made some moves. Obviously, they acquired Kyle Tucker and didn't have the outfield reps for him. So we were fortunate to be able to acquire him at the front end of camp. He's done a nice job for us in camp. He's a great guy, and we'll kind of see how this next week goes. It's really either he makes our club, or we likely have to expose him to waivers and expose him to the other 29 clubs. So we'll see how this week goes, and we'll go from there.
You know, this 4 days between now and opening day is such a time for maneuvering, and you know, you've got a couple of players hurt with McNeil and Alvarez, and teams are letting players go, and you talk about trying to sneak a guy through waivers, which would be hard to do. What are your goals over these next 4 days in terms of trying to improve your team if possible?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. I think the first part is, are there ways we can improve the 26 they're going to break? And that's always going to be a part of what we're looking at. And we feel really good about our guys who are healthy, who can go. But if there are ways, if there are players available that we can bring in, whether it's to backfill some of those injuries that we've had, whether it's to augment a spot where we feel like we're a little bit more shallow than others, we're certainly going to do that. There's also what we're doing in AAA and even AA in those layers below. This is a very active time of year for AAA and AA transactions. A lot of players become available and are looking for the best opportunities for themselves to try to ultimately get to the major leagues or get back to the major leagues. And so that's a lot of what's going on this time of year as well. And as you guys know, we pay a lot of attention to that. We know we're going to have 60 players over the course of the year suit up at the big league level. And clearly they're not all going to start here on opening day.
Yeah, I was wondering, with your evaluation, as this many guys are kind of hitting the market again, like what is it you're looking for in relation to what you need, perhaps with the injuries, but also what you value and you're valuing as an organization?
We'll continue that conversation and get David's answer when we come back from break. Good inning for Jose Urena. He's retired 6 in a row. And Brandon Nimmo is going to try to hit for the cycle. I don't think I've ever seen that in a spring training.
I have never seen that in spring training. I'm not even sure I've seen the attempt in spring training.
Double, single, triple. That's the thing. You never get a chance to hit for the cycle. David Stearns is joining us in the booth, and right before the break, Murph was asking a question.
Yeah, I was just asking, with the number of players that are becoming available, what you're looking for in relation to your need, and how that matches up with what you value offensively and defensively.
You know, it's interesting. So this is a really interesting time of year to evaluate a little bit. We've got players with track records, and you know, we have all this historical data of what they've done throughout their careers. We have historical scouting reports. And then a lot of times players come into spring training and they look a little different. They've worked on something in the offseason, especially pitchers. We see it all the time now, where it's a new pitch, it's added velo. And so a lot of what we're trying to do in spring training is figure out what's changed and if that change is real. And sometimes a guy has changed for the better, and for whatever reason there's not an opportunity in his current organization, and maybe you can jump on that. So it is, spring training, as you guys know, is a challenging time to evaluate, right? You're not necessarily facing major league competition all the time. Depending on whether you're playing in the front half of games or second half of games, is going to impact the quality of opposing pitching you're going to see. So it's a challenging time to evaluate, and so we try to look at kind of that underlying skill level and whether that has changed from one year to another.
Yeah. You sought to get as much depth in your starting pitching ranks as you could going into the season, and you immediately were forced to go to your depth with the injuries to Montas and Minaya in spring training. Do you feel as though that's an area where you still need to add?
I don't right now. I think we're in pretty good shape. Clearly, you don't want to lose two established starting pitchers, clearly guys that we anticipated were going to pitch towards the front end of our rotation. If we were going to lose them, I'm glad it happened at the front end of camp. It allows us to use this 6 weeks to be part of the time where they're going to come back. But we need those guys, and we're fortunate that their rehabs are progressing well so far. We still got a little ways to go, but we're fortunate that we're headed in the right direction. We're going to be better when they're back. But until they're back, we have a lot of confidence in the guys we brought in. And guys like Tylor McGill, David Peterson, who have really earned opportunities here and have pitched extraordinarily well in camp. We're excited to see what they can do.
You know, it's an amazing thing. It's 4 straight years now that Tylor McGill has begun spring training on the outside looking in and winds up making a start the first time through the rotation. What do you see in Tylor that encourages you that this is the year where you take off?
I think with Tylor, it's just been a series of incremental steps forward. I don't know that we need to see this massive jump. He's got great stuff. And so it's as much a mentality of let's stay on the attack, let's throw strikes, let's try to get a few more quick outs so we can get a little bit deeper into games, because he's proven that when he can stay in and around the zone, he's a very effective pitcher.
Yeah, thinking about what you said, with unfortunately losing Minaya and Montas early in the season, it just gave you those 6 weeks to evaluate not only the guys that you know, but then what someone may be doing new in another organization throughout spring training.
That's exactly right. That's a lot of what our scouts are looking at when they're out looking at other camps. A lot of what we're trying to detect in the front office as well. And look, guys are working year-round now to try to get better. And when you don't have eyes on them over the 4 months of the offseason, sometimes they can surprise you a little bit when they come into camp.
Yeah, like seeing something new.
No cycle for Nimmo. We'll have to wait for another day. You decided today to send Daniel Nunez down. You optioned him down, figuring that he needs a little more time.
That's really all this is. We know how good Nunez is when he's healthy. We know he's going to be a big part of our season. We want to give him the best chance to succeed out of the gate. You know, we had a little bit of a slow ramp, and we just need a little bit more time over the first couple weeks of the AAA season to get him into grooves that he can carry the load that we need a major league reliever to carry.
How about Minter? I know he's going to pitch tomorrow. Are you going to wait for that to decide whether he'll be ready?
I think so. All signs are really positive with him right now. We don't need to make a decision today, and so we're not going to make a decision today, but he felt really good coming out of the last one. I thought the ball was coming out of his hand really well in his last outing. The velo ticked up a little bit. His secondary has looked good all spring. So we'll get through tomorrow and make sure he's in good shape, and then I would expect him to be in good shape come Thursday.
How have been your impressions of Soto? I mean, he doesn't get out much, but just being able to see it, you know, every day in his routine.
It really is impressive. And you touched on, like, the routine is what is so unique about this guy. And we see it with all the great players. It's the same thing with Lindor. He's got such a disciplined, detail-oriented routine that he knows he can anchor to, whether he's going good or going bad. And Soto's the exact same way. He takes his craft incredibly seriously. He cares. It's a great example for everyone in our clubhouse. And it's been a lot of fun watching him this camp prepare for a season and the intensity with which he prepares.
Yeah, I was listening to you, as you said, anchor. Like, I feel like he anchors his routine. He can anchor your lineup. But I got a chance to play with Juan for just a little bit, and I don't think I've ever seen him take a pitch off. And that is contagious on, like, what excuse do I have if my best player is not taking any pitches off?
And we've seen that in spring training, right? Juan's a great player. He probably doesn't need 6 weeks of spring training to get ready to hit. But from game one, he was locked in.
So the injury to McNeil gives, at least for the moment, Beatty and Acuna an opportunity. I was talking about this yesterday, that if it happens later in the season, maybe that's Jett Williams, maybe that's Ronnie Mauricio, maybe somebody else has an opportunity. Where do you see the ramp up for those two guys starting their minor league season? Where are they going to be playing, and how quickly will they be playing?
So Jett will be playing in Double-A, and will be going right away. Ronnie's going to spend a little bit more time down here to make sure that he's fully in game shape. I expect that once he's in game shape, he's going to play here for a little while in the Florida State League, get some competition under here, and then he's going to go to AAA. And once he's in AAA and feeling good, we know how talented this guy is. And when there's a need, we wouldn't hesitate to call upon him.
And what positions will those two be playing?
So Jett's going to continue to play the 3 up the middle. We'll probably give him a little bit more exposure to center field than we have in the past. And Ronnie's going to play the 3 on the dirt. He'll play short, second, and third when he's ready. We think he can play all 3. Obviously, we got shortstop covered for a little while, we think. Hopefully we have third base covered as well. So we want to make sure he's getting enough variety around the infield to ensure that wherever the opportunity is, when he's ready, he's an option for us.
You know, with all those guys that we just talked about, it gives you a plethora of options moving forward. It's got to be so hard to figure out which of those guys winds up being the guy who helps you and which is the one that you use to try and improve in other areas.
So the way I look at it, if all of them are playing well enough so that we can envision them either helping us or potentially trading for a meaningful piece coming back, we're in a great spot. That means we're evaluating well. That means we're developing well. We're coaching well. So that's a wonderful problem to have. If we get to June, July, and we've got a logjam of infield prospects who are all playing well at the upper minors or the major league level, I will gladly sort through that conundrum if we get there.
And I think the other guy that every Met fan wants to know about is Brandon Sproat, and what your plans are for him and what you see the timeline for him.
We're not going to put a timeline on it. I think he is an extremely impressive pitching prospect. I've been fortunate in my career to be around a couple of guys who got to AAA in the big leagues very quickly, and he's right in that group. And he is very dedicated. He's clearly got the big velocity. I think what we need to see is frankly just success at AAA. I mean, we want to see him have success there. I think he learned a lot during his brief stint there last year. We certainly believe he's up to the challenge, and once we see that, he'll be an option for us if we have a need.
I did see Brandon Nimmo got the start in center field today. There's a chance that's an option perhaps, and
I think it's as much about in-game maneuvers as anything else. I think you could see situations where we got 2 right-handed starting center fielders. Maybe there's a leverage at bat mid-game with a nasty righty on the mound, and Mendy wants to go to a lefty off the bench, and that lefty stays in the game somewhere, and then Nimmo can slide to center. So I think it's as much about making sure that he just has some comfort out there in spring training if there's something that happens in game and Mendy wants to slide him over. Yeah, I think Brandon can play all 3. I think he's got a home now and left, but he can certainly play all 3 if we need to.
Do you have any updated time frame about Alvarez or McNeil?
There's really nothing new. I think both are working through their progressions well. I still think Alvy, we're on that 6 to 8 week time frame from the original injury, which probably puts us towards the end of April, early May. Jeff is still feeling a little soreness there, but I think is progressing towards baseball activities, and that one could be as soon as maybe mid-April to second half of April.
Which leaves only a short period of time for the young guys to make an impression.
Yeah, what I've learned in this thing is a lot can happen in a short period of time, and things can change fast, and I root for health and I root for good performance, and then we'll figure out the rest after that.
Alexander Canario continues his terrific day. 2 home runs and now a base hit through the hole. 3 for 4 afternoon for Canario. I want to go back to Brandon Sproat for just a second. I know he's going to be starting games in the minor leagues. You never see a scenario where he gets called up to be a relief pitcher if you have a need there?
I'm not opposed to it. I think every pitcher's development path can be a little bit different. Just because you break in to the big leagues as a relief pitcher doesn't mean that that's your ultimate destination. We've got Johan Santana in camp this weekend. That's a great example. There are plenty of others around baseball of really good starting pitchers who had their first exposure to the big league level as a relief pitcher because that's where the need was. So I wouldn't be opposed to that if that's where we end up getting towards the second half of the year. I think the one thing you do have to consider is once you shorten a starting pitcher up in season, it's really tough to lengthen them back out again. So if we're going to do that, we have to be pretty certain we're not going to need Brandon as a starter at some point later in the year. I think once we shorten him up like that and put him in a slightly different role, very difficult to flip the switch back and ask them to go pitch at the front end of the games and give you 85, 90 pitches.
I was gonna ask. It can be. Oh, swing it. Send him.
Acuna with the base hit to center field. Beatty heading home. Throws cut off. So Luis Angel Acuna with an RBI single to make it 9-2 New York.
But in your position, criticism comes easily. It can. I was curious if there's an area of the job that you really enjoy, that someone that might not surprise someone, but just an area of putting things together you really enjoy.
I enjoy the conversation and debate, and I think that's what's fun about any of these jobs is we're all, if we're in a front office, we're all looking at the same pieces of information, and we can come to vastly different conclusions, and that's a lot of fun to sort through.
Yeah.
David, it's been terrific having you here. Thank you so much for providing us with some information, and I think we're all ready to go.
I think we are. Appreciate it, Gary.
All right, David.
Thank you.
David Stearns,
Thanks,
Mets President of Baseball Operations.